want some quality time with Daddy?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Magnum Martell, and welcome back to another beautiful episode of Magnum Reviews, the series where I sit down and I review things that I want to review. If you've ever seen an episode of this little series, then you know I'm not your typical professional reviewer who knows exactly what he wants to say all the time. But we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So today we're going to be reviewing the movie Prey. Prey is the fifth entry in the Predator film franchise. Now, needless to say, when this movie was being produced and they were just telling us stuff about it, there was a lot of controversy, and a lot of people, myself included, were basically assuming the absolute worst, that it was going to be another feminist girl power film. But I'm happy to say that, at least in my opinion, was not the case. I am a huge fan of the Predator movies, yes, even the third and fourth film, although my complaints about the fourth film I'll talk about a little later. So I was trying really hard not only to avoid spoilers about this movie, but to not go in assuming the absolute worst, which is a habit I'm admittedly trying to get into for everything. I'm trying not to go into everything assuming the worst, but with modern entertainment, that's not easy. But without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit about the quick plot summary. I'm going to talk the things that I liked about the film, the things that I didn't like about the film, my complaints, and what I hope to see in the future. I'm going to be using gameplay footage from Predator Hunting Grounds, a PS4 title on this, because I don't want to use any shots from the actual movie and get myself hit with a copyright strike, because unfortunately, when it comes to reviewing movies and TV shows, more often than not, if you use any actual footage, you do end up getting hit by a copyright strike a little bit. But alright, going in, I just gotta go ahead and voice my primary complaint with this film, and this is more of a me thing than it is a problem with the film itself, and that's that it's a Hulu exclusive. Not the fact that I don't have Hulu, because I do, but what bothers me about it is that I have a hard time sitting at home and actually watching movies, especially by myself. I'm the type of person that I will be doing 6 things all at once. I'll be sitting here editing a video, and then while it's rendering, I'll be sitting there playing a game on my laptop, catching up on stuff made by my favorite creators, or watching TV. Or even, on occasion, depending on how much time I've got, playing 2 games at once. So, I'm definitely not the type of person who's going to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie all by himself, unless I have some company. And in the case of this movie, like all of the Predator movies, I've basically had to watch them myself because my significant other does not want to watch them. She has no interest. Well, I'll admit, it was difficult for me to sit there and just watch the movie. I ended up pausing and walking away several times just because I can't sit there for 2 hours and do nothing but pay close attention. But I wanted to. I was determined because The Predator is one of my favorite film franchises. It's definitely one of my favorite action movies. I love the first 2. I even like the third one. Alright, so basic plot summary. This one actually takes place in the past. The first movie took place back in, I think it was the 1970s? This one actually takes place in the year 1917, where we follow a Native American woman and a couple of her fellow tribesmen. Basically, the entire movie, the woman wants to prove that she can be a hunter. Her brother obviously being the most accomplished hunter in their little community, their little village. And her being an expert medicine woman, having been trained by, I think it's her grandmother or her mother. Honestly, the movie doesn't exactly explain who the woman that she hangs out with the most throughout the film is. I'm going to tell you the truth. The first 45 minutes, maybe an hour of this movie are incredibly boring because it's really, really boring long setup. We start off hearing the native language, which is fine and all, but it didn't give us any subtitles, so you don't understand like the first 10 minutes worth of content. And then they finally switch the language to English, thank fucking God, because this is just my opinion. I prefer it when movies and games and shows are in the language that I personally understand. I know some people like the authenticity of having the language be spoken of the characters based on where the plot is taking place or who the main characters are. But in my opinion, even if the dubbing is bad, I would rather hear it in English. That's just my opinion. And thankfully, it does switch to English after the first couple scenes. But anyway, the main character wants to prove that she can be a hunter just like her elder brother. And everyone assumes that she can't do it. That's why the movie's called Prey, because even the Predator doesn't see her as a threat in this movie. He sees her as prey. Which, if you know anything about the Yautja, which is the actual species name of the Predator, fun fact for those who don't know, it doesn't make any sense for him to see her as prey. The Predators have a very honor-based society when it comes to their hunting methods. And when it comes down to it, if you're not a threat, if you're not a danger, or they don't think that you could pose any kind of danger to them, they're not going to attack you. There's even a scene that they use in the first and the second movie to highlight this honor-based system of the Yautja. In the first movie, it's the scene where the Predator picks up the woman, the main female of the movie, and then doesn't kill her after he scans her because he realizes she's pregnant. To a Yautja, that would be considered dishonorable, to kill a pregnant woman. 1, because of the disadvantage, and 2, because she's with child. That's not a good thing, not a good look. And in the second movie, there's another scene where the Predator is in a public park, currently just scouting around, looking around in the middle of the day, and a child with a toy gun sees him cloaked sitting in the tree. He scans the toy gun and realizes that it's not real and not a danger. Therefore, he considers this young boy to not be a threat and doesn't attack him. Something that is one of my many complaints about the fourth film is that they actually break that convention a little bit, where the Predator actually wants to take the main character's son in that movie. But that's for plot reasons. We'll talk about that a little later. Anyway, that's one of the things about this movie that actually kind of bothers me, is that we actively see this Yautja, this feral predator, break the honor code. And yes, he could be a bad blood. For those who are unfamiliar, bad bloods are those who have been dishonored and exiled from their clan and the homeworld, and are technically supposed to be put to death, but are on the run. They are effectively fugitives to their own kind. But also, based on the way that the feral predator acts in the movie, it doesn't appear that he would be a bad blood at all. My biggest complaint about the first 45 minutes to an hour of the movie is that there are about 5 or 6 different scenes of her practicing with her hatchet. Obviously, her hatchet is going to be her main weapon, and it is the weapon that she cares the most about. There's constantly scenes of her throwing it at rabbits and deer, trying to kill them, and then having to go and retrieve it. And then at some point, she finally realizes, oh, she can tie a string or some rope to her weapon and effectively make it so that she can just pull it and get it back to herself. And there's a scene later where this actually saves her from some quicksand that she gets stuck in. And the quicksand ends up being relevant a little bit later, but the other men, the hunters of her tribe, actively make fun of her for tying the twine around her weapon, mocking her, saying that she needs to put a leash on it. That's one of the things that actually did bother me, is that the hatchet, although it does come into play in her final showdown with the Predator, ultimately it ends up not being as important as they put emphasis on it in the early parts of the film. But anyway, so the Predator shows up, and we get the first opening scene where it appears. The ship drops it off, and she sees the ship, and she refers to it as a Thunderbird, which I believe is something from Native American folklore, as some kind of god. But anyway, pretty much the first scene we're given is the parallel to the Predator and the Snake, where they see using heat, where the Predator is standing there invisible, and a rattlesnake, goes to bite him, and he just kind of stabs it and then skins it. And she finds the corpse of the snake and tells the other hunters of her tribe that something obviously killed it. She even tells her brother that she saw the Predator's arrival, referring to it as a Thunderbird. There's a scene where they're going out to hunt a mountain lion that's going around, and of course, the other warrior and her sitting in a tree, hanging out, waiting to ambush the lion, while he's mocking her, telling her that he's going to be the one to kill the lion because he's a real hunter, and she is nothing but a woman. Blah, 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 feminist bullshit. Big surprised, he gets killed, although it is kind of funny that they give him the Wilhelm scream.
You've never faced a lion. Its mouth full of teeth like arrows, ready to tear your flesh and crush your bones. When your brother comes back, he and I will find the lion and kill him.
So immediately after this, she fights the lion, and then she ends up getting knocked unconscious because she falls out of the fucking tree. And her brother kills the lion, and it doesn't really explain how he found her on time. When she fell out of the tree, you think the lion would have immediately went to her. But, you know, it's just a dumb movie scene of setting up the fact that nobody respects her. Which is something that they contradict a little bit later, because up to this point, and even up till the point where I'm going to get to, in the movie, her brother is mean to her, repeatedly. They set him up to look like he's just this case of toxic masculinity. He doesn't think a woman can do it. But then there's a scene where they're in danger, and he actively admits that it was her plan to kill the lion that he used. That's how he ended up winning, and he admits that he respects his sister and thinks she does have what it takes, but she's too worried about proving herself rather than waiting for her moment to come. He's worried that she's going to get herself killed, and that's why he tells her she's not ready to be a hunter. Which, to be fair, he's right. There are several scenes where she actively almost gets herself killed, including what is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is a scene with a bear. She ends up finding a bear down by the river, and she goes to take a shot at it with her bow, and it ends up noticing her and going after her. Her dog ends up saving her ass by distracting the bear, which is something that comes into play later during the fight with the predator. But the bear damn near kills her, and she ends up hiding inside of a beaver den so that it doesn't kill her. And while it's actually attacking the beaver den, trying to get to her, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, the predator shows up and fights with the bear. And it's a pretty good fight, actually. The bear and the predator tussle a little bit, and then the bear thinks that it's beaten the predator and decides to leave. When the predator gets up after playing dead for a minute to get the bear to cool off. And when the bear turns around for round 2, the predator decks the motherfucker in the face. Honestly, this bear scene is kind of the point where the plot actually starts getting a move on and getting to the point, rather than just dicking around with her wandering around the woods being stupid. Anyway, there's a scene shortly after this where a couple of the men from the village find her, and they tell her they've been out looking for her and that her brother wants her home because he's worried about her, and of course she refuses because she doesn't like them. So they get into a quick tussle, she ends up punching the one in the face, and then they tag team her and knock her the hell out, tie her up. And as they're dragging her back, of course, they run into the predator as she's trying to warn them that there's something out there. Something dangerous. Because they're being stupid and cocky rather than using their brains. And we end up getting what is probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is the 4 hunters trying to take on the predator with sticks and rocks and spears. And he just makes such quick work of them. It's honestly a beautiful scene. It's visceral. It's everything I love in an action movie. If more of the movie was like this, honestly, I would say that I would have enjoyed it much more, but the first hour and a half is so boring. She ends up fleeing the predator knowing that she can't fight it, and this is one of the things that the movie tries to highlight, is that she's smart, but she's not physically intimidating. And this is the thing that ultimately turns to her advantage, is that she's intelligent, she can think, she uses strategy instead of just attacking outright. Whereas when we see her practicing in the early parts of the film, she's just attacking, trying to be like the rest of the hunters in her village. She gets captured by some French settlers who use her and her brother as bait in an attempt to lure in the predator because they know that it's out there killing and they want to try and kill it. The predator doesn't fall for their trap. He kind of walks in with obviously not the intention of killing her or her brother because they are not currently a threat, and that's just not the usual way. We don't really see what goes on when it comes to what the predator was going to do with them, because he just kind of ignores them and walks past them, given that they're strapped to a tree and can't really defend themselves. But he does end up going on what is probably my second favorite action scene in the movie, where he slaughters most of these French settlers that tied them to the tree, because to him, them setting a trap is them issuing a challenge, and in the Yaojua's position, he's not going to let that stand. He ends up killing pretty much all of them. She goes back to the camp to get her axe, and this is where we get what is the worst scene in the movie, in my opinion. And it's the scene that most people have complained about in their own reviews on it. The scene where she takes on 4 or 5 of the settlers in their camp by herself. And they just keep going at her, and she keeps overcoming them. I didn't like this scene very much, because we have this 110-pound woman taking on these multiple 190, 200-pound men all by herself and winning. And yes, it's supposed to play to her being smart. It is your typical action movie scene. I didn't hate it as much as some other people, because to me, it's no different than the scene in The Raid Redemption, where the 120-pound cop takes on like 50 dudes in a small hallway by himself and wins. It's just an action scene that's supposed to highlight the transition of the main character to being a fighter, to being better than they were at the beginning. The movie doesn't even try to play it off as this girl power moment. It actually plays it on this moment of she's defending herself and learning to fight. Although it's stupid that she goes back to their camp to begin with to even get her weapon. Some things happen. Her brother ends up getting killed by the predator after attacking it, and she steals the predator's mask. And this is one of the things that I didn't like about the movie. We finally get to see the Predator's face when she takes its mask, and it looks nothing like the Predator actually should. My God, why does he have a Neanderthal forehead? Look at how they massacred my boy. And this is one of those things where I really think that it was just to make the Predator look more brutish and stupid, because if you look at this Predator compared to the ones we've seen throughout the rest of the franchise, he has a fucking 12-pack of abs here. I get the feeling this was supposed to be one of those, let's make him look as masculine and brutish as possible, so that he appears to just be a stupid man. We finally get the one-on-one showdown with the Predator, and this is where her intelligence comes into play. She's not Dutch. She's not the guy from the third movie that used the same tactic Dutch made. She can't use its own strengths against. She doesn't have the physical strength to take a big tree branch, light some fire, and then sneak up and smack it upside the head and run away repeatedly. No. Instead, she uses her intelligence that the movie tries to tell us that she has, even though she spends the entire movie acting like a fucking idiot. She uses a strategy and her superior agility, as well as the fact that it underestimates her to her advantage. She hits it a couple of times, she attacks it a little bit, she lures it into a trap using its own helmet, because obviously it's going to try and retrieve its biomask. Although I'll admit, I hate the design of the biomask in this movie. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a bone, a skull with some of the tech in it, and I don't know why they went for that scene. I get that it's supposed to be an older, less advanced Predator, but we see its weaponry. We do see the Predator has the signature wrist gauntlets. We see that it has, like, an arrow launcher. We see that the biomask has the targeting system, so I don't really understand what the hell they were going for here. And if it's supposed to be a more feral Predator, it doesn't make sense that the scene where it gets dropped off via the ship and then the ship leaves. It would do what the Predator in the first couple movies did, and it would actually park its own little ship somewhere. She and the Predator have her showdown, and this is where the quicksand I talked about earlier comes into play, where she lures it into the quicksand to trap it, and of course it stands up like, yeah, I'm too big for this, and it doesn't sink at all. Then it goes to use its own arrow launcher against her, and this is a scene we see. We see that this Predator uses the arrow launcher without the targeting system, and he's not accurate at all. He does not know how to aim without it, and the targeting system still kicks in when he's using it. We actually get how she finishes him off is using the targeting system to get him to shoot himself in the head, which is fucking stupid and hysterical at the same time. She returns to her village with the severed head of the Predator. They accept her as a warrior, and the movie ends. Honestly, I liked it. It was a good movie. I didn't expect to spend 18 minutes on the plot synopsis, but honestly, I will say, as someone who likes the Predator movies, I enjoyed the film. It was a good sit down and watch. I don't regret seeing it, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, and everybody's trying to say. So when it comes to the things that I liked about the movie, I liked the action. I like the way that they portray the Predator in combat as not only tactical, but physically opposing. I like the scenes where the Predator takes on several of the men from her village, and the, 20, 30 French settlers, and absolutely kicks their ass. I like the way they portray the main character's brother, in that he's concerned about his sister, even though he's sure she can do it, but she's too eager. Her moment hasn't come. I like the way they portray her as intelligent, but naive and overestimating herself, and she has to overcome that. Now for the things that I really, really didn't like. I didn't like the way that they portrayed the Yautja as sometimes following the code of ethics, the rules of honor that his species is known for and portrayed to have throughout all of the different forms of media. Sometimes, but then other times showed him to be a feral brute who's more obsessed with killing. Honestly, I don't like the way that they finished off the Predator, to be totally honest. I don't like that she used making him shoot himself in the head with his own arrow launcher, which made no logical sense, in my opinion. I've gone over the fact that I absolutely hate what they did to his face. Look at how they massacred my boy. I can't fucking stand it. I understand that there are different variations of Predators. We see different types. There are berserkers, there are smaller ones, there are larger ones, there are males and females, and even in the fiction, the females are actually portrayed to be the bigger and more brutish kind. There are different there are different clans of Yautja, all with different rules and codes and methods. Some of them prefer to be melee fighters, some prefer to use range. Some of them will rely strictly on their plasma caster. there are different levels of experience. Like the Predator in the first movie is a cocky youngblood on his first real hunt, after getting the title where he's allowed to go to Earth. The Predator in the second movie is obviously more experienced. There are elders that have centuries of experience. This is one of the things where there are different versions and different variations of different Yautja. But the Feral Predator I can't really place. Because on the one hand, he acts like an experienced hunter, but then he makes some rookie mistakes that even a youngblood wouldn't make. His face makes no logical sense to me, because even though we've seen that there are different kinds and different appearances of predators, there are different skin tones, different patterns, different types of dreads, all kinds of different things, generally they have the same facial and body structures, for the most part, within minimal variation. His forehead being this bulbous, Neanderthalic lump that his mask is meant to cover doesn't make any sense to me, and I can't stand what they did to him. Even in the game Predator Hunting Grounds, which offers the player ways to customize the unique look of the Yautja they play as, generally their actual head and facial structure is the exact same. Obviously, there's no way of knowing what clan this particular feral predator is from, as there's not really a way of knowing in any of the movies, because none of the movies actually explore the prospect of the Predator homeworld Yautja Prime, their society, or anything like that. Just their general rules of ethics of a good hunter doesn't kill someone who can't fight back. A real hunter doesn't kill someone who's not a threat. More or less, a hunter seeks the challenge and the glory of an honorable kill and taking a trophy, rather than just slaughtering indiscriminately because there's no point. That's not an honorable hunt. That's something that we only really see explored in the extended media like the games and the comics. And I did an entire video, actually, I did a Let's Talk Gaming about talking about how I want a single-player Predator game where I talk a lot about that stuff. I highly suggest you go watch it. It's some of my personal favorite best work, although I was using my old microphone in that video, so be warned, I don't sound nearly as good as I do right now. But this Predator in particular, there's no real way to place where he's at, because we see that he definitely prefers melee. We even see him use a combi stick that splits up the middle, where one end is blunt and the other end is a spear, which is something that, personally, I really liked. I thought that was pretty cool. He's very inconsistent with the rules, where we see him kill animals that attack him first, and attack bigger and larger ones like the bear. We see him go after the girl a little bit, but the more times that she flees him and gets beaten by an animal, the more he starts to see her as less of a threat and ignores her, even though he does track her a little bit. We see him take on the several hunters from her village with ease because they actually try to fight back. We see a scene actually early on where he goes to kill one of the French settlers, but he thinks he's dead because she gave him some medicine that more or less lowers the body temperature. I believe it's supposed to be like a numbing agent. They don't really explain what the flower she gives him is supposed to do, or does. And the Predator ends up stepping on his leg, and when he screams, the Predator kills him. In that position, that wouldn't make any sense to me, because he's not a threat. He's on the ground, he's dying, he's in pain. The Predator thought he was already dead. That kind of thing. It doesn't make sense that the Predator would slaughter him after he screamed in pain when it stepped up on and broke his leg. Accidentally, because he's not a threat. He has one leg. He's already done. So it's really inconsistent in whether this Predator is a bad blood who got dropped off by a clan of bad bloods, because that kind of thing has been shown to exist in the extended universes, or if he's just another Yautja who's there for the annual hunt on Earth. Actually, no. I really don't. Overall, I liked the movie. I thought it was good. If you like the Predator movies, I highly suggest watching it. It's way better than the fourth film. I hated the fourth film, The Predator. That was such a bad movie. The whole concept of the super predator and that autism is the next step in human evolution really pisses me off. I hated everything about that. I still liked the movie. I still at least enjoyed watching it, but ultimately I hated everything about the reason for the main plot, especially giving the humans a suit to fight back against the Yautja, as if the Yautja have been planning some kind of full-scale invasion. And I think part of the reason they went back in the past is, rather than go further ahead, is because they want to ignore the mistake that they made with that movie, trying to make the Yautja seem like they were plotting some kind of invasion and that the hunting was to enhance themselves. Now, it would make sense if there was one particular clan using DNA to enhance themselves. I could see that being a thing, and that another opposing clan was against it. But I don't see them helping humans by giving them tech to fight back. In fact, there's actually a game, which was Predator Concrete Jungle, I believe it was. Yeah, that's the one. There's a PS2 game that explores a world where the humans got their hands on the Yahua's tech, and the Predator whose fault it was sent there to fix his mistake centuries later, because it made hunting on Earth completely impossible for the Yahua. Honestly, I would recommend that if you like the Predator movies, you go watch Prey, because it is a little bit closer to the first and second film in terms of general pacing and the human overcoming the much bigger threat. I thought it was a good movie, I liked it, and I would hope to see more like this, where they go back and explore more of what the Yahua are actually like, where we get more of just the lone survivor takes on the hunter and outsmarts him. It felt much closer to the source material like the original movie, while still including elements from the later films, which I liked. And honestly, if they're going to do another movie, I'd rather they return closer to the modern day, or at least get further back. Not back into ancient times, but closer to like the original couple movies. I would very much like and prefer that. In fact, I think that would be the best way for them to go about it, and continue to completely retcon the bullshit where the Yahua are planning a full-scale invasion of Earth. The Predator is one of my favorite science fiction franchises. I've been watching them since I was a kid. I don't remember when I saw the first movie. I think I was like maybe 13. It's been a very, very long time. But generally, I enjoy these movies, and even the worst ones like the fourth one, I can enjoy them just because it's more content of the Yahua. This one, although I have my complaints, overall, I liked it. I thought it was a good movie, and I hope they continue to make more. And please, for the love of God, give us a third Alien vs. Predator movie. I know those movies aren't well received, but honestly, they're some of my personal favorites. They're a guilty pleasure for me, especially the second one. And that's all I have to say about it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed my review of the movie Prey. Look, please leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought about the movie, and if you were pleasantly surprised as I was that it wasn't a feminist girl power, men bad message kind of film. Let me know what your thoughts about the feral predator was and the way he acted. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this one, and do all the things the algorithm likes. My name is Magnum Martel, and hey, I will see you in the next video. I believe the next review I'll be posting is probably going to be about Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed Edition, which is a remake, because I did do a video that I'm not very proud of. It's not my best work about the first game. Highly suggest you go check that one out. We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, everybody.